Good morning, Joe. Welcome to the Light on Suitability podcast.
Good morning.
We're back. You're back from your trip. That's excellent. Safe and sound. And we're here to talk about your 36 Strategies of Suitability, an excellent book that is a guide to navigating the parole suitability process in California. Today, we're on strategy 12. My review of that chapter shows that it is important because those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, as we know that famous expression. I would not have thought that was George Santayana, but I guess it was. In this chapter, Joe talks about the journey of self-discovery through the process of writing an autobiography. Interesting. And he doesn't describe it just in the manner in which that word sort of resonates with us all, but well, it doesn't, but it's recounting life's events, obviously an autobiography, but it's a very specific deep dive into your past. And he analogizes that to an archaeological dig. That is important so that you can uncover, your loved ones can uncover and examine the actions, motivations, and experiences that have shaped your loved one. And I got all the dogs here. Okay, my husband's away again, so I have dog patrol, but usually it's nap time at 10 o'clock.
Hey, you can do it. More power to them.
Yeah, dogs like to sleep a lot. Okay. I think they sleep like 18 hours a day or something.
Wow.
But anyway, the key points, takeaways, and then I kind of want to ask Joe to chime in on his ideas, and then maybe we'll get off on a tangent like we always do when Mike's not here to keep us on track. He talks about the purpose of writing an autobiography. He talks about the power behind storytelling in general emphasis back to that old world word honesty. I think he talks about, structuring it out so that it has a solid beginning, middle, and end. That way it'll be, helping you with your insight. And asking yourself questions, I believe, was part of it. Or he asked questions to help guide your loved one in the autobiography process. And by the way, he talks about the writing process in general and the benefits. So it helps you to explain your past, but as the quote indicated, your future actions as well. And again, I would also say there is a good overlap here with a process known as shadow work, which is a Jungian philosophy on how to figure out, oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Why we do the things we do. There he is. Hi, Mike. We started without you. I just gave
That's
you.
okay. I was having some technical problems, so.
Oh, that's okay. Just text me if you text me. I thought, well, maybe he got busy, but
No, I was trying a new device and it's not set up the way it needs to be, so I'm going to have to get it set up before next week.
All good. We were just talking about autobiographies and that archaeological dig. So, Joe, give me some of your thought processes to start us off. Did I kind of summarize the chapter correctly? Number one, and then, your thoughts on any of those items.
Yeah, your summary was great. And it's about going back and, finding the reasons how you came to be the person that you were, from your various influences and impressions. attitudes, the way you adapted to the world from a very young age, and how it affected you and your behavior and your conduct. And the reason I think that writing is good is because you don't have to go to a health professional or wait for a group to be formed. You can do it immediately, and you have all the answers inside of you as well. You need, obviously, a guide would help, a coach would help, but this is something that could even be done in cell and in the form of writing and going back and just exploring your past from your earliest memories. It would help to have prompts, maybe, and that's why in the book I have prompts such as talking about power, belonging, the influence of drugs and alcohol, shame, all of those things that not just to write about objective facts that happened to you in the past, but your feelings that went along with whatever the events were in your life that happened, and your relationships with your parents, your family, teachers at school, and of course friends and peers, associates, why you went in the direction you did, the influences. And if you can identify that or most of it, then you can discover what were the causative factors that led to your crime. And that's key, because when you do that, then you can work on your past character defects. You'll probably get even more insight into what you did and the harm and suffering that was caused. So all of those things, that's what writing, and I call it in the book an autobiography, but you can call it anything you want as long as you go back and you explore to know your past influences and how it directed you in the path you went down. So that's why writing an autobiography is important.
For sure, for sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned shadow work, and the more I think about shadow work and the process in general of discovering insight and making connections, drawing connections, because this ultimately is about helping your loved one make the connection between what happened before and why what happened in the life crime and maybe into his prison or her prison career. And that the overlap is, number one, the introspection and self-discovery process. So like Joe was talking about, you're examining your events, motivations, and actions, and to reflect on who you were and how you've changed over time. Shadow work does a very similar thing, and there's a lot of workbooks and journals on that you can get, or your members, you as family members can send to your loved ones. But shadow work also involves delving into the unconscious aspects of your personality, those parts of you that you have repressed or denied. And so it's about bringing those shadow aspects to light. And in shadow work, you integrate them into your conscious self by identifying them and then healing from them, which is exactly what the process of insight and becoming suitable is about. Also confronting the past. So it's encouraging you to confront and document your past experiences, including your mistakes and regrets. And by understanding your history here, you can learn from it, like Joe said, and avoid repeating the same patterns, as he mentions. And in terms of shadow work, it too involves confronting your past head on, and focuses also on the emotions and character traits that you've either disowned, rejected, or embraced in some cases. And you have to start first with accepting those parts of yourself in order to heal, number one, because a big topic of conversation right now at these parole hearings is trauma. And the questions are being asked, Oh, you had trauma? Okay, what have you done to heal from it? Not just identify it to make a connection as a causative factor, but what actually have you done to heal from it and become a whole, undamaged person? I mean, we're all damaged to some extent and will remain so, but what are your strategies going forward on healing from that trauma, and what have they been before? And then honesty and transparency, obvious, right? The autobiographical writing, as Joe talks about, requires honesty in recounting your life story. And you have to be truthful about, number one, what happened, how you felt about it, what were your motivations, and that's going to help you gain that genuine insight. And with shadow work, also demands brutal honesty with yourself. And you must acknowledge and accept the darker parts of your psyche, such as, what are we talking about at parole hearings? Anger, jealousy, fear. We've all heard those things, right? And then you may have been suppressing those as a motivating factor for some of your behavior. So again, shadow work, so key here. And the emotional core and reflection, you're looking as an autobiographical tool to get to the emotional core of that life story, not just the surface, okay, what happened, but the actual, how did it make me feel? What belief systems came out of it? The feelings that came out of it, triggers, and so on. And so you have to look on those significant events and the emotional impact to understand how they have shaped you. Again, so shadow work's the same thing. It involves emotional reflection, and you have to explore too your feelings associated with those shadow aspects, is what they're called, basically negative, positive things that we project onto others. So if you projected your fear onto somebody by killing them, raping them, robbing them from them, or whatever, that would be necessary to do this shadow work to help you achieve emotional healing and balance. There's structure and process to both of these things. And you need to really gain a cohesive understanding of who you were, not just sort of a couple of pieces. You've got to be able to connect those dots, okay, from beginning, middle to end. That helped figure out where you were guided, either negatively or positively, through your life phases. And that will create the narrative that you're going to discuss with the panel. So again, and then the goals of integration and wholeness. The goal of autobiographical writing is to gain self-awareness and insight, and helping you to explain your past experiences and move forward with that clearer sense of self. And the shadow work too, it aims for psychological wholeness. It wants to integrate the shadow aspects of your unconscious self to your conscious self, and leading to a more balanced and authentic existence, and really identifying, okay, the negatives. Why are we doing that? Oh, it was a protective mechanism, or it was this, or it was that. So then you put in place of that some sort of positive protective mechanism, instead of your ego using this negative protective mechanism to help you. And most people, shadow work is really kind of key, because most people don't know that, including myself, that we act on autopilot. And that autopilot is typically our shadow self, according to Jung, and you can believe it or not. But I found so many parallels with Joe's chapter. And I don't know that Joe has, I just think this is more of a kismet thing that he brought this up, and that it matches with, I don't think he's a psychology major, if you know what I mean, but he talks about journaling, okay? And that's both meditation and reflection. So meditation is key to kind of settle your mind, because before you can settle your mind, and I heard something really cool about meditation again this week, and I forget, and I should have written it down, but it's that ability to figure out what your mind is saying, and then you can journal about that, because that nonsense, the roommate in our head, right? And then I'll turn it over to whoever wants to go. But that roommate in our head, right? The roommate's always telling us, we invite the roommate in. This I learned from the book Untethered Soul, but we invite the roommate in. The roommate comes and lives with us. We give him free rent, right? And then he starts complaining about the food, the housing, the bedding, the facilities. Then he starts from there, he starts to pick on you and tell you, oh, you're this and you're that, and your boyfriend sucks and your girlfriend sucks and you suck. And we let that roommate upstairs, which is our ego, the ego part of the that's influencing our mind versus what our God-given whole nature is, which is the Holy Spirit should be guiding us. But that's what I learned. The meditation helps to quiet things down so you can hear the Holy Spirit, which is the positive. Holy Spirit is a Course in Miracles topic, but you can actually hear that positive guiding force in your life, and it will help to drown out in some way the ego, which is super loud, that roommate super loud, just telling us we suck. And we don't tell them to beat it. Like, move out, man, out. I don't need you. It's just all negative. And so that's why meditation is so key, because it helps us to recognize, and it starts to reprogram our mind, our positive mind, to telling the ego that I don't want to listen to you anymore. I'm going to listen to the Holy Spirit side of things. And so the autobiography is, again, so cool that Joe has all these overlapping things. And I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's a happy accident for him. Or maybe it was. I don't want to, this isn't a criticism in any way of Joe. I just thought it was very interesting, all of the overlap stuff. So anybody, I went on and on, but anybody who wants to chime in, go for it.
Well, one thing I did find in my journey is, on the spiritual side, I was taught to meditate as a way to just quiet myself and purge all the negative influence in my life just for a moment. And then I started getting into therapy. And guess what? It's one of the first exercises they taught me was meditation. It's amazing that in both psychology and pretty much every religious basis that I've ever encountered, there's some sort of meditation to help quiet and soothe our souls, soothe our minds, and to calm us. And I'm a pagan by practice, and I do a lot of meditation. And I have different types of meditation depending on what my goal is. But the core to all of them is quieting the inner self so I can hear. Because just on a daily basis, even now that I'm out here, all the, well, roommates, as you call them, there's many more of them than there were ever before in prison. You know, I have everything pulling my time over here and over here and over here. And inside, I'm trying to answer all of them. And taking that time just every morning, just to, when I wake up, to lay still and just focus on just absolutely nothing, allows all these little voices vying for my time to calm and lets me see the bigger picture. And this was a very powerful tool when I was going through my shadow work, as it's called, finding my deepest, darkest crevices, the places where I hid from myself. And I'd never been able to do it without some sort of meditation practice. It's just, meditation is just so invaluable, people. You know, it doesn't matter if you're the one working on yourself on the inside, or you just need a quiet moment in your day. Find a meditation that works for you and just quiet your soul just for a few minutes. And I guarantee your day will get brighter, things will become more clear, and you'll start realizing things about yourself that you may have hidden or, you know, just forgotten about. Some may be good, some may be bad, but, you know, if we find the bad things, we can work on them to be better people. And, you know, if we find something good that we've forgotten about, embrace it, share it with the world. Meditation is a wonderful gift. What do you got, Joe?
Well, just to add to what you're saying about meditation, I agree 1,000% with how valuable meditation is. But what I'd like to say is that is so important, I think, in this chapter because it gets you. I think it's something you must do before you sit down to write. And you talked about bringing it into remembrance, and that's what this archaeological dig is all about: is bringing things back into remembrance that have lied dormant in one of the files in our minds. To make a computer analogy, it's always been there, but you've forgotten about it, and to bring things back into remembrance is what exploring your past is all about. And I think you nailed it perfectly there, Michael, about meditation and how it's common to the various different forms of therapy and the things that you that helped you. It all started with meditation and getting quiet, and that is common among all religions, by the way, as you said, as you pointed out. Even in recent current events, they'll ask for a moment of silence for somebody who was harmed or somebody who suffered a tragic loss, and they'll ask for a moment of silence, and that's common throughout our existence. So that's my response, Michael.
And to add to that as well, like, what Michael's saying, like, how do you start, well, my clients say, oh, I can't stop the mind from, I just can't do it. I'm not good at meditation. That is the classic all the way across the board. The point is to sit there without anything coming in. And guided meditation is fine. If you're just filled with a lot of negativity, and a guided meditation can help to do that, but it is just training wheels. And the point is to sit there. Your ego part of the mind is gonna go nuts because it doesn't want you to quiet down so that you can hear the truth about who you really are. And what will happen is you're just there to observe. And so even if you have to, that you observe the mind, and then you have it, if you have a tether to something, then maybe a counting system, or a focus on an in and out breath system, or a mantra system where you have just a word that steadies you, that you pick. Some of these places will charge you for it and tell you it's this revolutionary thing. But ultimately, all these things are training wheels. And the Buddhist monk that's sitting there, I can assure you, his thoughts are going by, but he's trained his mind or her mind to watch them just as clouds going by, and to think about it in the way that the Course in Miracles says is, these thoughts are meaningless. They're absolutely meaningless. So if you have to start somewhere, start small. Start, for instance, if you're like me, a fidgeter, if you ever see me on this any podcast really, with my husband or anywhere else, I'm fidgeting. In my hearings, I'm fidgeting. I got called out by some victims once. They were like, Commissioner, tell that attorney to stop fidgeting. I'm like, why are you looking at me anyway? Why aren't you staring straight at the victim or anyway? But it's true. So what I had to do is I had to start with my meditation 5 minutes. Okay. 5 minutes. That's all you need. and just say, I am going to sit still. And if you can get through the whole 5 minutes of sitting still, then add a little something to it. Add an observation so that I know the thoughts are going to go by. You suck. You got to do this. The dishes aren't done. You left your house a mess. You sound like an idiot. Blah, blah, blah. That guy hates me. Whatever the nonsense is going on in our heads, right? Just, fine, let it go by. But if you're struggling with that, then find something. If the mantra doesn't even work or the counting doesn't go back to the breaths for whatever, okay, fine. Sometimes what you can do is some of these practices will engage in a focus on noises outside of yourself. And that's another big one. I can't meditate because it's not quiet in prison. It's like, oh, then it's even more important for you to sit and meditate and let all the noises get around you. Don't worry about it. You can just observe. Oh, I hear that door clanking. Oh, I hear that someone making coffee next to me. Oh, I hear that officer talking about something. And you can just observe it and move on. And then slowly, so you sit still and then add 5 minutes of just observing noises. If you can be lucky enough, to just sit outside in the yard. I know it could be kind of tricky to do that, just sit quietly, but you could, focus. There's birds that are there in the yard. I mean, I hear them when I'm in my interview room over there. There's birds sometimes they're in the lunchroom. And then, whatever it takes. And then maybe you could move on to a little bit more of an intermediate practice where you go, okay, now I'm going to observe the thoughts going by and pay attention to them. And if you need to have some kind of, a prompt or something, even some people will teach, oh, there I go, thinking. But I like the one from Course in Miracles. These thoughts are meaningless. And I just keep trying. But I have for years, I don't know, 15 years plus into this, and I'm still a fidgety, crazy monkey mind mess most of the time. I can have like one good minute where I'm like, oh my God, I'm right on it. But it's not the point. So there's no score in it. The score is to sit there with nothing plugged into your ears, because we are so plugged in. We've got to have stimulus, right? And that's my biggest thing. So when I'm doing the dishes, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm listening to an audiobook. I study my Spanish. I've got to read this. I've got to read that. Somebody sent me something or whatever. I want to multitask so bad. And so meditation forces me to stop multitasking, other than this whole messed up thing that's always going on. But that's the whole point. It's the point. So you could also add to it, like Joe mentions in his book, journaling. Of course, you have to journal in order to create an autobiography, but you could even stop and note a thought and then go back. And if it's just buggy, a note on something important that you've recalled because your mind was steadied, just stop and write it down. Like the monks aren't going to go, oh, you're a bad meditator if you do that. That can be very helpful. You'll just have to, I would say, make it a longer session, I think, because if you're constantly interrupting yourself for 5 minutes, it's not going to, they say 20 minutes is the sweet spot, but you build up to 20. So anyway, not an expert on meditation at all,
Well,
but it's important practice, like Mike was saying.
and I found that being in a prison environment with a lot going on around me, sometimes it was hard to focus. I would get distracted, get into other thoughts, other things, get too deep inside of my head to be able to really focus. And that's why we use some of these crutches, some of these grounding techniques, some of these things to bring us back into the present moment. And the real, probably my most favorite one is what we call 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So when you can't focus, you can't concentrate, you're just scattered everywhere, stop. Look around and then say out loud 5 things you see right around you. And then stop again, listen. 4 things you hear right around you. And then 3 things you smell, 2 things you feel, and 1 thing you taste. Bring yourself back into the present moment. Center yourself again, and then try again. It's real easy. And
And the
sometimes we
most
have to have
important
it.
thing is to, when you realize that there's the one part of the mind sees, observes the other part of the mind, the ego part going nuts over here. The success is not that the ego mind is going crazy, because that's not who you are anyway. It's just observing that, oh, there he goes again. All right, back to the breath, or back to the grounding technique, whatever it is, the mantra, the 5 4 3 2 1 strategy, or whatever your grounding, your recentering technique will be. But the success comes in the recognition that you've observed, instead of getting, well, you might get sucked back into it, but even if you got sucked back into the thought for even 2 minutes, okay, but oh man, I've been just going off on a tangent over here. Or not I, actually, not the true I, but the ego has just been going off, carrying me off like the dog does with my chicken, just running off with the chicken, and it's like, wait, come back. Joe's speaking. Turn off your unmute and start again.
Oh, I'm sorry. As I was saying, Mike brought up a really good point about with the 5 4 3 2 1, because whenever you're in any kind of environment where things are going on that are distracting you, I think what Mike said is key to getting started. It's kind of like a prompt to get rid of as many of the distractions as possible. Then once you do get started, at least in my limited experience, meditation, I think it's a combination of being mindful and focusing. If you do those 2 things, be mindful of, let's just say, the 4 things that you hear. In Mike's analogy here, or not his analogy, but his the prep for getting started. The 4 things you hear, that's focus, and it starts getting rid of the distractions, and allows you to concentrate. So you're mindful and you're focusing, and I believe those are the 2 keys to meditation. And the hard part, just like anything else, like exercise, it's getting started. And once you get started, you feel good about it and you can keep going. So get started, lay that groundwork with the 5 things or any technique that you may pick up, and getting started and doing it, that's what it's all about. And I think once you get into a practice of that, it'll accumulate day to day, that quietness and the benefits of it. And anybody can do it. It's free. You don't have to be in a group. So anybody with the desire to do it can do it.
So key, Joe, and just trying to get out of your own way and be disciplined, and go back to Joe's original chapter, which is think free. If you want to think free, then sit down, take some 5 minutes for some type of meditation practice, or stilling the mind, or whatever, and however you need to do it, and then get back and then start doing your autobiographical work, because I think it is so important. And one of the things that Joe recommends is asking questions. And one of the things that we know, right, is before we go to sleep, sometimes I have this exercise is ask yourself the question that you can't seem to figure out the answer to, or need an answer to, or need to reflect on, or you need to figure something out. Like, I can't find my such and so. Okay, well, sleep on it. You've heard the thing, sleep on it, right? Well, meditation is a form of getting your brain into the, not the quite the sleep. What do you call those? Delta, alpha, beta waves and all that stuff, but theta waves, or one of those. And then it's such a powerful thing, like the Silva mind technique as well. Big thing is meditation. But before then you can meditate, and maybe you could ask yourself some of the questions that Joe recommends in the book, like, what was my family structure like? What role did each family member play in my life? Describe your time. What were the significant events that shaped my early years? Going into education, favorite subjects, activities. That could be really important for you to do that shadow work and finding the positive things that you ended up repressing. The early childhood. When did you start getting into trouble? What were the circumstances? What age did I join the gang? What age did I start using substances? How did these substances affect my decision? Because you may just have shallow understanding of these things at first, but so then you make it a goal. Maybe every day you just pick one question that you're going to focus on for the autobiography, because it's not something that you're going to just sit down and then hammer it all out. It's going to be in probably sections that you'll then put together, and then you can use that to create your insight narrative of causative factors, connecting the dots between those and your character defects. And you can talk about your responsibility. You can talk about remorse in that autobiography as well, because the autobiography just isn't about the trauma, right, from before. It's all the way through, all the way up until your parole hearing, because the question is, who were you then and who are you now? So it's an important prerequisite really to a lot of these other things that you're going to have to conquer before you're found suitable, and all the pieces that you have to put together for the board. And so, yeah, I think that meditation goes hand in hand with this chapter. Maybe Joe will end up adding that to his third edition as part of that chapter. Who knows? But it certainly seems like an important part of that journey.
And by the way, Elizabeth, I don't know what I'm missing, but I never see you fidget, by the way. I've never noticed that. And you're muted right now, Elizabeth.
That's really nice, Joe, but it's true. Trust me.
Well, I don't know. I'm missing something, because you seem stable to me.
Oh, well, you don't see me bouncing down here.
Right.
Camera angles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I've noticed too is when we're doing this shadow work, when we're delving deep into ourselves, I mean, the steps we worked on earlier, a few weeks ago, talking about the 12 steps, when we're doing our inventory of all the wrongs we've done, it's not just that. That's not where we stop. A lot of people go, okay, well, I did all this bad stuff in my life. But if you do the full step, you recognize and admit to all the wrongs you've done. You also recognize the good you've done in your life, and you recognize the resentments you still hold.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people stop short. And that's where the shadow work's really going to help us, because we are a whole person. And a lot of times we don't treat ourselves as such. We just treat ourselves as the defective bent toy that everybody sees. We don't allow ourselves the big picture that, somewhere in there is that kid with that hopes and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
That kids that, loves to go out and have fun, that loves to spend time with his family and friends. We focus on so much on our addictions and our behaviors and everything that got us to where we are. We overlook some of the most important stuff, Because guess what? If it hadn't have been for those good seeds in there, those good things we've done in our life, the people we shared it with, we might not be in prison just trying to get out for a single crime. We could be very easily turned into somebody like a Ted Bundy or something.
Mm.
And that happens when we just refuse to acknowledge the good in our lives. And, we spend so much time on the prison yard trying to be hard, trying to fit in, trying to be that tough guy, not show any weakness, that we push all that stuff aside. And that's, in my experience, where I found I started getting in more trouble, not embracing that good side of myself. And, this journey of self-discovery is intense. It really is. I mean, when I looked back initially, all I saw, like I said, was all the abuse, the beatings, the verbal and emotional abuse. Then I saw my dysfunctional marriage. I saw all the things that I did to destroy that, and all the things that my ex-wife did to destroy that. And then I looked at everything up to the day that I was doing the meditation. And all I saw was the negative in there. And there's no healing there. I mean, for me, healing is a big thing. And part of the shadow work is uncovering all of the truth, not just the unpleasantness. We have to uncover the pleasant truths too. We have to uncover the resentments. We have to uncover the hopes and the dreams. We have to uncover the fears. It's all this stuff that makes us a complete whole person. And how can we truly have insight into ourselves if we don't? And, as much and as hard as I've worked to get to board, get out of prison, there's still so much that I have to discover. And this is not going to be just a quick journey until you go to board. If you're serious about becoming the person that you long to be, that the one that we all want to be, that successful, kind, compassionate, loving person, this is something we're going to have to work on. We're going to do this shadow work every day of our lives. I don't care if you're a criminal. I don't care if you're the Pope. We all have to take a look inside and find our shortcomings, our blessings, and everything else that makes us whole. And the biggest thing is we have to be truthful about it. And it was a lot easier for me to accept the darkness in my past because it explained a lot. It made a lot of pieces fit for me. But it was those outliers that just really threw me off. I had an abusive mother, and I loved her to death to the day she died. And we went through and we honestly did the work together to rebuild our relationship. And I'm thankful for that. But before I had gotten to that point, it was just so much easier to say, yeah, I learned all this anger and this violence from my mother. And so it became normal. But, there were times when my mother wasn't out of remission and she was in her right mind, she was the sweetest lady on the face of the planet. And we had good times. So it was learning how those good times and those bad times fit together to bring me to where I am now. Because the decisions we make aren't just influenced by one side or the other. Now, as far as criminals, yes, we may have a stronger negative influence. But why is it we are denying the good in our lives? to go over to make those bad decisions? What is it that's driving us for that? And these are some of the things we have to discover. I mean, and we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. And more importantly, when your family member is in there doing this work, trying to get ready for board, trying to get ready to be a better person, we as the loved ones who are part of this have to be brutally honest. We have to own our stake in this. Whether it's good or bad, we have to own it. Because that's the only way we're going to help our loved one heal. It's the only way we're going to help heal our family, our community, and everyone around us. Honesty and integrity and accountability are the pillars of everything we do in rehabilitation. Without it, none of this works. And especially not the shadow work, not the deep soul digging. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. And it took decades. And I'm so happy that I'm able to do this work now. And I'm so happy that I get a chance every morning when I meditate just to go back and look. And I'm finding a lot more things to be thankful about now, a lot more good in my life now. And I'm recognizing that the bad times and the hard times I had in my life aren't what defined me. It came down to, yes, they influenced me and they nudged me, but I got lazy in life. It was just easier to go with the pain, and go with the anger, and go with the violence than it was to get help. And it was a lot less painful. And that's where the honesty comes in, folks. Joe, you have some?
No, I'm just listening to you. That was great. It was spot on, and it comes from a source that's real. Me and Elizabeth, well, at least myself, we're in our offices most of the time, but you're doing it. You're in the trenches. You've been in the trenches, and well, maybe in some respects you still are because you said it's ongoing. And I think that's a great, it's a great observation that it's not one and done. It's not like once you get a grant, that's it. It's a lifelong thing of being vigilant and not going back to that dark place and it comes down to, that old saying that if you're not busy being born, you're busy dying. So it's a constant thing as we go, and building on what you've learned in the past as well with new insights and applying that to your, every minute of every day. So thank you, Mike. That was,
You're welcome.
it's wonderful. I'm surprised every week you come up with new stuff. It's so good. No, seriously.
Well, he's a programming positive former inmate, and it's clear to see why he was granted parole. I mean, it's fairly obvious to me.
Absolutely.
Perfectly clear. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't have done this without help from people like you, though. There are people along the way that gave me the inspiration and the guidance, and sometimes just a swift kick in the ass that I needed when I needed it. And yeah, like Elizabeth was notorious for saying in the boardroom, you did the work. You're the one that did this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I did the work, but sometimes we all just need a little encouragement. We all just need that little extra push. And that's what guys like you do. And Elizabeth, you people provide such a valuable resource inside. And, it's good to see that the families have the opportunity to get to understand some of this too.
Yeah.
Because families are one of the keys to rebuilding. Rebuilding ourselves, rebuilding our lives, just
They are
from the ground up.
But
Mhm.
you'd be surprised, Mike, because I've sent probably at least 2,000 flyers into the prison and prisons. And in every one of those flyers, it has tune in, let your families know to tune into the podcast. And in every one of my letters as well to my clients. So hundreds there. So I'm talking 1,000 flyers I've ordered. I've gone through 2,000 flyers, I'm pretty sure. And everyone has tune in to the show. And I'm not trying to, this isn't monetized. It's not for any of that. But the shocking lack of interest, it's either not reading the flyer. Not I notice a lot of my clients, they just don't read stuff. Even if I put a big bold, read carefully, follow instructions, they don't do it. Okay. So that's a big factor there. I know the ones that they come to their meeting, like Mike came, things checked off, things highlighted, this question for this thing, clarification on this part of the letter, this and that. That is a very rare find. Okay. In clients, it really is. It's like 1 out of 10, maybe 1 or 2 people in my whole batch of appointments or assignments that I'll have somebody motivated. The rest are either maybe motivated, they just don't do it because they know they're not doing what they need to do. But again, the flyer says tune into the show, right? And my letters say have your families tune into the show. Why? Inmates don't want their families to tune into the show, right? Because they still want to go with the narrative. I'm guessing, I'm totally guessing. It's either lack of reading or lack of wanting them to tune in to see and hear what it is exactly needed to get out. And it's not, well, we've done so much time already. He's been a good boy, and all this stuff. And it's either, that cognitive dissonance. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to know. And also what you said, Mike, and what I've said before, we have all played a role in the dysfunction of the prison community on one level or another, because the majority of families are dysfunctional and the majority of families are at least related to prison. Like I haven't met a lot of functional parents. I know they're out there, but I haven't met a lot. Most parents are just got their own baggage that's been unaddressed. Okay. And you're creating, and then the worst families, the worst dysfunction, the foster systems, the abuse, the drug addicts, and everything else. I don't care. I know that at parole, we can't say this, but again, might I state the obvious that it has contributed to the situation. If you had raised this baby, this small child, this wonderful human being, gift from God properly, they wouldn't be in prison. And I'm blaming society as well, a little bit, but we all are in the same damaged, broken society. So some of us navigated better. Some of us got lucky. I'm not going to say some of us just got lucky, but families play a role. And getting back to the point that I'm trying to make is they don't want to tune in because they haven't done the work. They're not doing the work. And I have talked to my clients all the time. Well, what's going on with dad? Oh, yeah, he's still a drug addict. He's still in prison. Oh, he's still this. He's still that. Nah, she's okay. We've mended fences, but she's never going to acknowledge that, she played a role in this or whatever. So I think that's another reason why I'm tying that into your comments about dysfunctional families and getting on my bandwagon about being dysfunctional. Please, if anybody's out there and you're a parent or a grandparent, please be a good parent or grandparent, because this shit rolls downhill. So, ending on another negative, but anyway, be positive, be a good parent, be a good family member, do what it takes, be honest that you're not perfect, you're not, mistakes were made. Okay. let's undo them first by saying, you know what, son, daughter, I am so sorry for being such a screwed up parent. And I'm going to do the work and I'm going to heal along with you.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
We all have to be accountable for our parts. We all have to be willing to make amends and heal.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's whether it's the mom, dad, grandmother, brother, sister, best friend. We all had a part in each other's lives. We all influenced it. And we all have to be accountable for the damage we did, just like we have to be accountable for the good we've done. Again, we own our whole person, our entire set of actions, our thoughts. We're
Yeah.
not just one deed. I'm not
No.
just the fact that I murdered a man back in 1998. That's part of who I am, and it always will be. But it's not the part that dictates my life. It's not the part that dictates who I'm going to be. And, you know, for any chance that this ever gets into the tablets in the prison system, because they do have podcasts on those tablets, maybe that's something to look into.
Which podcast provider?
I do not know, but it's through the GTL tablet. I can try to find out for you, but just in case this ever makes it in there, you know, a lot of guys don't give this information to their families because they're ashamed,
Right. They're not
because
doing
they're
the work.
embarrassed, because they're not
Right.
doing the work. And this is going to show the families what has to be done.
Yeah.
And if their family knows, now they have to be more accountable. And
Right.
Did Michael freeze up?
Potentially. Yeah, he froze up. We're going to wrap up, and another great show from everybody. There he is.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, it's not that they're lazy and they can't read. It comes down to a lot. It's pride. And they don't want to be seen as coming up short, especially with their families. Because, let's face it, a lot of our families put us on a pedestal higher than we deserve to be. And we don't want to let them down. And when they see, oh, well, this is, you know, I was watching this podcast and this is some of the stuff that, have you been working on this? No. That's a terrible feeling to, you know, tell your loved one, no, I haven't been doing everything I can to get home to you. But it still happens. And hopefully we can find a way to get these podcasts in so everybody can benefit from them.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
But
Because,
yeah,
like I
that
said,
would be.
the families aren't tuning in because they're either not being told about it or not interested for whatever reason. Next week, you guys, we're going to talk about strategy 13, writing the letter of remorse. I want to be respectful of everybody's time and get everybody cut loose on their big Sunday. But remorse, big deal. Some commissioners are really looking for it, some don't care too much about it, but remorse is obviously baked into the cake of accountability. So that just is a nice segue from the autobiography. And any closing remarks before we wrap it up?
Yeah, you know, if you're watching this, ask your family member if they're honestly doing the work and encourage them, help them, guide them. Don't be ashamed or afraid to be truthful with them about whatever role you may have had, good or bad. And also, if you're watching this, ask your family member to ask the next man and the next man and the next man to ask their families to tune in. Because only when we grow this community and make it stronger? Is this voice going to get out there and make a difference and reach everybody and start changing things for this system? It's not going to happen just with one voice, but together we can make one voice a million voices, 2 million, 10 million. And that's where real change happens.
For sure. For sure. Joe?
I believe Michael and you, Elizabeth, have said it all, and probably much better than me, but I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, well, you've got an entire book, so you don't need to say too much. So we'll see you guys next week talking about remorse. Thank you again. Enjoy your Sunday.
You too.
And thank you to all the listeners tuning in that tune in after the fact during the week. I really do appreciate it regardless. It's not for the benefit of us, really. It's for the benefit. Well, it is benefiting some of the guests we have on because it keeps them accountable as well.
Yes.
But like, subscribe, share if you feel the need, and comment, ask questions. That would be lovely. And I'll see you guys next week.
All right, go forth and be great people.
Great. Yes.
All right, everybody.